I would now like to invite IDFC FIRST Bank's Vaidyanathan to deliver the theme address. He turned an entrepreneur in his 40s and has been instrumental in funding the leaders of tomorrow, India's micro, small and medium enterprises, Avan.
In fact, Mr. Vaidyanathan is a career banker turned entrepreneur. He made it to the board of ICICI Bank at the age of 38. And then in a daring move, he personally leveraged himself and did a unique leverage buyout of a company and founded Capital First, multiplying its market cap by 10 times from 780 crore rupees to 7,800 crores. And he didn't stop there. He then merged Capital First with IDFC Bank to create IDFC FIRST Bank, and now is the managing director and CEO of IDFC FIRST Bank.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vaidyanathan is uniquely positioned to talk to us today. He's seen India from many angles, first as a banker, then as an entrepreneur, and so he knows the difficulties of attracting capital and building companies in India, don't you?
Thank you, Aisha. Good morning, leaders at Times Network, Governor Mr. Shaktikanta Das, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. When the agenda of this year's Economic Conclave, IEC, was mentioned as Aspiration to Action, I really felt very excited about that. I told the organizers there can't be a better theme in today's context because action is what we all want to see. Now, I will just take a couple of minutes to, not for the benefit of this audience, which I'd say is very highly evolved, but more to the common man and to the people at large as to how do nations bring people out of poverty. Now, in my mind, it's really very simple. You first create economic activity. Economic activity meaning someone makes cars, say Maruti makes cars, it sells to to probably a rich person, and in that chain, you know, the dealer, the distributor, the salesman, everybody makes their share of income in the process. Then even after the car is sold, maybe the workshop makes money, the chain makes money, the whole chain makes money, and so on and so forth for every line of economic activity that happens in the country, whether we're selling services or selling goods. Now, there are a number of people who do not participate in this chain or cannot participate in this chain, either because they're unemployed or uneducated or unskilled or poor or did not have opportunities. Now, the role of the government becomes to tax the chain that I described earlier and use those taxes to improve the lot of the second block whom I talked about who are lesser privileged. If you think of it in this light as three steps, as creating economic activity, taxing it, and helping the marginalized, then you will realize the power of GDP. I wanted to just share with you that in 1980, India's GDP was roughly equal to China. Per capita also was similar for both countries. How come after 40 years, between 1980 to 2020, China's per capita income is $10,000 and India's per capita income is $2,000? It's a very material thing. I went back to Wikipedia and once again checked what is the tax to GDP for China. It's 20%. China's tax collection is 20% of $14 trillion, and that works at $2.7 trillion. India's tax collection is close to about 33 lakh crores, which is $480 or $470 billion. Now, if China is sitting with $2.7 trillion of tax collection every year, naturally, China's ability to take people out of poverty will be far, far, far superior. And any case, because of economic activity, the number of people who are poor have anyway come down. Now you have more tax revenue, 5 times the tax revenue of India, and then poverty vanishes very, very fast. So we have to think, while I entirely agree with Mr. Anand, who spoke about how India has developed over the last 20 years, and it's quite astonishing. I must say China pulled out 800 million people out of poverty. 88% of China was poor and less than $2 a day, and today only 2% of China is living below $2 a day. Therefore, the point is that India seems to have missed a trick as far as growth is concerned vis-a-vis its potential, because both countries were the same 40 years ago, the same. Both were energetic, both were young, both had, similar. Now, what's the point of looking back? The point is that we need to know that we are behind. We are behind our potential. If we had put India on the track of a 10% growth that China did in the same time, in the same globalized economy, today we will not be seeing poor people under the bridges and in our rural areas, and as well as urban poverty. So, we are behind time. We are also racing behind time because a demographic bulge or demographic dividend is probably at least running out in maybe 20 or 30 years, as they say. Therefore, it is all the more reason for us to get going on this front. Now, how do we deal with this situation? We all know it's a very simple answer. We need to do reforms. When we say reforms, the key issue with reforms is that there is always a J-curve effect where first the people who are going through reforms suffer some pain, and then the benefit starts coming after 2 or 3 years. Now the ecosystem or the government in power that is doing the reforms is having to go through that phase for the subsequent governments, or if the same government comes back to power, to enjoy the benefit, and that's one of the key reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, I joined ICICI Bank in 2000. The first thing I did on joining on March 2nd, 2000 was to go and meet Mr. Vagul, who was the chairman of ICICI. When I met him, there was a certain liberalization India had done, and there were protests on the streets, and Indian entrepreneurs were screaming and fuming for that reform. I asked Mr. Vagul, what do you think of this is going on? How do you deal with the situation? He said, listen, Vaidya, I'll tell you a story. And this is a story he told me. It stuck with me after 20 years. He told me that, listen, once upon a time, the gods and the demons, as you know, they're always on opposite sides, they wanted to get Amrit, the immortal nectar, and they had to churn the cosmic ocean to get that nectar. He said, because ocean is large, they took Mount Mandara. The mountain itself was the churning stick, and the snake was the churning rope. He says demons and gods pulled it from different directions, and first came the poison, and it's called halahal. And he said the poison came, and then someone held it in the neck, and then came nectar. And he told me this story to say this is how reforms are and liberalization is, because the two ends of the stick are globalization and liberalization, and that is how we get to the reforms, because first there is pain. And this is one fundamental story that I heard quite a while ago. Now, as far as our country is concerned, the key thing is that we have, in the last few years, done terrific reforms, and that is why we feel positive for India. Because just in the last 5 years, we have done DBT, we have done alignment of fuel with the international markets. We don't spend 1 lakh crores a year like we did in 2013. We have done GST, which is a bold and landmark reform, ease the life of people. Ease of doing business is a facilitative reform. UPI is a facilitative process. IBC is a landmark reform. So each one of these reforms have made a facilitative process for the new Indian economy to drive upon. And each one of the reforms, they have dramatic impact on the growth of the nation in the years to come. Therefore, when we say that we want to see a new India and a large $5 trillion economy, our key agenda should be how should we create an inclusive $5 trillion economy. And I think, again, on this front, the government has done quite a lot of initiatives. For example, it's just in the last 5 years, India has done 100% electrification. It has India has created the UPI system whereby credit can reach the bottom of the pyramid. India has reached LPG to close to about 10 crore or 100 million homes, open 300 million bank accounts. If you think of these are all micro reforms, not the macro reforms like the GST and IBC and so on. So for India to make an inclusive $5 trillion economy, which should be the key agenda for India. India needs to be doing all the macro reforms at great gusto. I told you we were behind. I told you we had lesser tax collections, 5 times less tax collection than China. We need to fix that with macro reforms and then use the money to quickly do micro reforms to reach. Because for a child who's poor, we cannot say, you wait for India to become a $5 trillion economy, you'll become rich. A lady who's cooking fuel with wood cannot be told, we wait for India to become a $5 trillion economy, you'll be fine. So that arteries to create the $5 trillion economy in today's generation itself to the bottom of the pyramid. So these two, the macro and the micro, go hand in hand to create an inclusive $5 trillion economy. Whether it takes 2 quarters or 4 quarters. But the more important thing is once we set a target of $5 trillion economy and go towards a $5 trillion economy, whether we achieve it in 2024 or 2025 or 2026, the fact is that when we'll get crashed toward the party, all the reforms, macro and micro that we will do, will set India on a permanent path of success in subsequent years, because that will become a true market-oriented, adequate competition with no monopolies, free market, capitalist economy. That is what has been the success of many countries like US, Germany, Canada, and so on, where all the per capita incomes over $30,000. US is $60,000. Lastly, I'm very happy that we have a $5 trillion economy. Our Honorable Prime Minister has set it for us. It's really good to have a target because, I read a quote which was, I thought, very powerful, which said that tragedy in life is not achieving the goal. The tragedy in life is not to have a goal. I found that line very powerful, and I think to set a target of $5 trillion and then go for a dash for it, it'll make us do all the necessary reforms. So good luck, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this very special occasion. Thanks to your Times Network and all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.